Have you ever noticed that the person who steals the most from your future is rarely your enemy? It is rarely the stranger who doubts you. It is rarely the person who criticizes you. It is rarely the one who walks away from your life. No, the greatest thief of your future is the version of you that keeps looking everywhere except within. Think about this for a moment. How many people wake up every morning already exhausted before the day has even begun? Not because they worked all night. Not because life is impossible. But because their mind has already traveled through 20 different lives before breakfast. They wonder what someone else is earning. They wonder who is getting promoted. They wonder who has the better house. They wonder who is happier. They wonder why someone else's business is growing faster. They wonder why another person's marriage looks perfect. They wonder why another person's body looks stronger. They wonder why another person's life seems easier. And while they are watching everyone else's movie, their own life is quietly waiting backstage. Let me tell you something. A garden never grows because it watches another garden bloom. A tree never becomes stronger because it envies the mountain beside it. The river never reaches the ocean by arguing with another river. Everything in nature succeeds because it fulfills its own purpose. Only human beings forget this. Only human beings spend years trying to become someone they were never designed to be. Here's what most people don't understand. The moment you become obsessed with everybody else's progress, you become disconnected from your own potential. And disconnected potential is one of the saddest things in the world. I learned something years ago. I met an old craftsman who had spent over 40 years making beautiful wooden furniture. His workshop was small. There were no expensive machines, no glamorous office, no luxury cars parked outside, just wood, dust, silence, and hands that had learned patience. I asked him one question. How did you become so good? He smiled without looking up. He kept sanding a piece of wood as though the answer was hidden inside it. Then he quietly said, every day I tried to make today's chair slightly better than yesterday's chair. That was all. No competition, no comparison, no jealousy, no race, just improvement. One chair, one day, one lesson. And suddenly I realized something extraordinary. Greatness is rarely loud. Greatness is incredibly private. Success is built inside moments nobody applauds. While the world celebrates championships, champions are usually alone practicing things nobody will ever notice. Think about the athlete. You see 2 hours of victory. You never see 20 years of repetition. Think about the musician. You hear one beautiful performance. You never hear the thousands of lonely mistakes. Think about the entrepreneur. You admire the company. You never witness the nights filled with uncertainty. And the same principle applies to your own life. Your greatest breakthroughs will happen when nobody is paying attention. But here's the problem. Many people have become addicted to attention instead of transformation. They don't want to become successful. They want to appear successful. Those are two completely different goals. One builds your future. The other builds your image, mojas fade, character compounds, opas, attracts people. Substance keeps them. Let me ask you something. If nobody could see your progress for the next 3 years, would you still work just as hard? That question reveals everything. Because if your motivation disappears when recognition disappears, then recognition was your real goal. But if your effort continues even when nobody notices, then growth has become your identity. And identity is stronger than motivations. Motivation changes with emotions. Identity changes your behavior. The person who says, I want to exercise, depends on motivation. The person who says, I am someone who protects my health, depends on identity. The first person negotiates. The second person simply lives differently. The same is true for every dream you have. Stop asking how successful people think. Start asking who you must become. because achievements are temporary. Identity is permanent. Here's what most people don't understand. Your life is not changing because your focus is divided. Imagine trying to light a piece of paper with sunlight. Nothing happens. But place a magnifying glass between the sun and the paper. Suddenly, fire, the sunlight didn't become stronger. It became focused. Your mind works exactly the same way. Scattered attention creates average results. Focused attention creates extraordinary outcomes. And today, distraction has become one of the world's biggest businesses. Everything wants your attention. Your phone, notifications, opinions, argument, breaking news, endless scrolling, comparison, entertainment. Some people lose entire years, not because they made terrible decisions, but because they never protected their focus. Think about this for a moment. Every time you compare yourself to someone else, you donate a little piece of your confidence. Every unnecessary argument, a donation, every hour spent proving yourself, another donation, every opinion that keeps you awake, another donation. Eventually you wonder why you feel empty. Because you've been giving your attention away all day. Attention is the currency of achievement. Where attention goes, energy follows. Where energy flows, results grow. This is why learning to focus on yourself is not selfish. It is responsible. How can you become a better parent if you never improve yourself? How can you become a better leader if you refuse to grow? How can you inspire your family while remaining emotionally exhausted? Improving yourself is one of the greatest gifts you can offer the people around you, because people rarely become inspired by advice. They become inspired by example. I remember hearing about a man who decided to change his life after years of disappointment. Everyone expected him to make dramatic announcements. He didn't. Everyone expected him to post motivational quotes every day. He didn't. Everyone expected a huge transformation overnight. Instead, he disappeared. Not physically, mentally. He stopped arguing, stopped explaining, stopped proving, stopped chasing approval. Every morning he woke before sunrise. He read 10 pages, walked 30 minutes, practiced one skill, saved a small amount of money, ate slightly healthier, spoke more carefully, listened more than he talked, and repeated it. Not for a week, not for a month, year after year. People laughed at first, then they forgot about him. Until one day, they noticed something impossible to ignore. His confidence was different. His conversations were different. His finances were different. His relationships were different. His health was different. Someone finally asked him, "What changed?" He answered, "I stopped trying to improve my reputation and started improving my character." Those words contain an entire philosophy. Because reputation depends on other people. Character depends on you. Reputation can disappear overnight. Character follows you everywhere. You see, many people want to change their circumstances before changing themselves. But circumstances are often mirrors. If you become more disciplined, your opportunities begin to look different. If you become more patient, your relationships begin to look different. If you become more grateful, even ordinary days begin to feel extraordinary. The outside often changes after the inside changes. Not always immediately, but consistently. Here's another lesson. Life whispers to those willing to listen. Every season has a purpose. Winter teaches endurance. Spring teaches preparation. Summer teaches effort. Autumn teaches gratitude. Yet many people expect permanent summer. They want rewards without winters, growth without discomfort, harvest without planting. But nature refuses to negotiate. Every meaningful achievement asks for a season of invisible work. And perhaps that invisible season is exactly where you are today. Maybe nobody understands your dream. Maybe nobody believes your vision. Maybe nobody applauds your discipline. That doesn't mean you're failing. It may simply mean your roots are growing before your branches become visible. A bamboo tree spends years developing beneath the surface before shooting upward with astonishing speed. Most people only celebrate the sudden growth. They ignore the invisible preparation. Your life often follows the same pattern. The strongest transformations are usually happening long before anyone notices, which is why focusing on yourself requires enormous faith. Faith that today's effort matters, faith that small improvements accumulate, faith that quiet discipline creates loud results. The compound effect is one of life's greatest miracles. One page every day becomes dozens of books. $1 saved each day becomes financial habits. One conversation handled with patience changes an entire relationship. One workout becomes another. One honest decision becomes a trustworthy character. One courageous moment becomes a lifetime of confidence. Never underestimate small actions repeated consistently. Mountains are moved one stone at a time. Masterpieces are painted one brushstroke at a time. Legacies are built one ordinary day at a time. People often wait for extraordinary moments while ignoring ordinary opportunities. But ordinary days create extraordinary lives. Let me tell you another story. There was once a young violin student who desperately wanted to perform on the world's greatest stages. Every lesson ended with frustration. Every mistake felt unbearable. Every improvement seemed painfully slow. One afternoon, the teacher did something unexpected. He placed 2 seeds on the table. One seed was planted in fertile soil. The other remained in his hand. Weeks later, the planted seed had become a small green plant. The seed in his hand looked exactly the same. Then the teacher asked, "Which seed had more potential?" The student quickly answered, "The one that grew." The teacher smiled. "No, they both had the same potential. The difference was only this. One accepted the discomfort of being buried." That lesson stayed with the student forever, because becoming who you are meant to become often feels like being buried before you feel yourself growing. The darkness is not the end. The pressure is not punishment. Sometimes it is preparation for a life that is far bigger than the one you can currently imagine. Think about that for a moment. A seed does not complain because it cannot see the sunlight. It simply keeps becoming what it was created to become. But human beings often panic the moment they cannot see immediate results. We confuse silence with failure. We confuse waiting with losing. We confuse slow progress with no progress. And because of that, countless dreams are abandoned just inches before they begin to take shape. Let me tell you something. Your life is not a race against another person. It is a conversation between who you are today and who you are capable of becoming. Every morning, those 2 versions of you meet. One version says, "Rest a little longer." The other whispers, "Your future is waiting." One version says, "Nobody will notice if you quit." The other quietly reminds you, "You will notice." One version keeps searching for comfort. The other keeps searching for growth. Every decision you make casts a vote for one of those versions. Most people believe their future is decided by one big opportunity. But life rarely works that way. Your future is usually decided by thousands of tiny decisions that nobody else ever sees. Whether you read one more page, whether you keep your promise to yourself, whether you choose discipline over distraction, whether you control your emotions instead of allowing your emotions to control you, these moments seem ordinary, yet they quietly become your identity. Here's what most people don't understand. The strongest people are not those who never become tired. They are the people who have learned not to negotiate with temporary emotions. Feelings are wonderful servants. They make terrible leaders. If you build your life around how you feel, your direction will change every week. Some mornings you will feel inspired. Some mornings you will feel uncertain. Some mornings you will question everything. That is part of being human. The mistake is believing that every feeling deserves your obedience. Imagine a captain steering a ship across the ocean. Every hour, the wind changes direction. Would the captain surrender the wheel every time the wind shifts? Of course not. He adjusts. He stays committed to the destination. Your emotions are like the wind. Your values are the compass. If the compass remains steady, the changing winds cannot steal your destination. That is why focusing on yourself begins with understanding yourself. Many people know the names of celebrities. They know every detail about strangers. They know every trend, every controversy, every headline. Yet if you ask them one simple question, what kind of person are you becoming? They have no answer. Isn't that remarkable? How can someone build a meaningful life without first knowing the architect? You spend years studying careers, years studying technology, years studying other people. But have you spent even one honest hour studying yourself? Not judging yourself, not criticizing yourself. Simply observing yourself. When do you make your best decisions? What environments bring out your discipline? What habits quietly drain your confidence? What conversations leave you energized? Which relationships challenge you to become wiser? Which habits keep pulling you back into yesterday? These questions change lives because they shift your attention inward instead of outward. I learned something from watching a blacksmith many years ago. His workshop was unbearably hot. Each strike of the hammer echoed through the room. I watched him place a glowing piece of steel onto the anvil again and again and again. He struck it with incredible precision, not randomly, not emotionally. Every strike had intention. Finally, I asked him, "How do you know when to stop?" He wiped the sweat from his forehead and smiled. "I don't strike until I'm angry. I strike until the metal becomes what it was meant to be." Think about that. Life often feels like that hammer. Sometimes failure strikes. Sometimes rejection strikes. Sometimes disappointment strikes. Sometimes loneliness strikes. The question is not whether life will shape you. It will. The real question is whether you allow those moments to make you bitter or better. Steel does not become stronger by avoiding the fire. Character does not become stronger by avoiding difficulty. Your greatest lessons rarely arrive wrapped in comfort. They usually arrive disguised as inconvenience, as delay, as disappointment, as uncertainty. And only years later do you realize those moments were quietly building strengths you could not have developed any other way. Here's another truth that changed my perspective forever. You cannot hate yourself into becoming someone you love. Ride that again in your heart. Some people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to another human being. They make one mistake and call themselves failures. They experience one setback and convince themselves they are not enough. They compare one chapter of their story to someone else's highlight reel and conclude they are behind. But growth is never built on self-contempt. Growth is built on honest responsibility mixed with patient compassion. Take responsibility for your actions. Absolutely. Own your mistakes. Certainly. Learn from every failure. Without question. But never confuse making a mistake with becoming one. There is a profound difference. The person who failed at something still has infinite possibilities. The person who believes they are a failure often stops trying altogether. Your words become your beliefs. Your beliefs become your choices. Your choices become your habits. And your habits quietly become your destiny. That is why you must become careful with the conversations happening inside your own mind. No one hears them, yet they shape everything. Imagine carrying an invisible backpack every single day. Inside that backpack are all the sentences you repeat to yourself. I'm always unlucky. I'll never change. I'm too late. I'm not talented enough. No one believes in me. Every one of those thoughts is another stone placed into the backpack. Eventually, you wonder why every step feels heavy. But the weight did not appear overnight. It accumulated one thought at a time. Now imagine replacing those stones not with empty slogans or unrealistic fantasies, but with truthful, empowering beliefs. I can improve. I can learn. I can become more disciplined. I can recover. I am responsible for today's choices. Notice how different that feels. Not because life instantly becomes easier, but because your mind stops working against you. The greatest partnership you will ever have is the partnership between your future and your present decisions. Your future is constantly sending messages backward. It whispers, thank you for exercising. Thank you for saving that money. Thank you for reading instead of scrolling. Thank you for apologizing. Thank you for forgiving. Thank you for refusing to quit. The tragedy is that most people only hear the opposite voice. The future saying, I wish you had started. I wish you had believed. I wish you had taken care of your health. I wish you had spent more time with your family. I wish you had focused on what truly mattered. Pain has two different languages. One is the pain of discipline. The other is the pain of regret. The pain of discipline usually speaks quietly. Wake up, practice, repeat, stay consistent. The pain of regret waits patiently. Then one day it speaks with incredible volume. Years pass more quickly than most people realize. One birthday becomes another. One Monday becomes another. One New Year becomes another. And if you are not intentional, you can wake up one morning and discover that you have been incredibly busy, but not meaningfully productive. That realization can shake a person to the core. Because activity and progress are not the same thing. Movement and direction are not the same thing. Being occupied and being fulfilled are not the same thing. This is why focusing on yourself requires regular moments of silence. Silence is where clarity grows. Not the silence of giving up, the silence of listening to your conscience, listening to your values, listening to the quiet voice that often gets drowned out by the endless noise of the world. There is something remarkable about walking alone, without headphones, without notifications, without the pressure to impress anyone. At first it feels uncomfortable, then it feels peaceful. Eventually it becomes necessary. Because in those quiet moments, you begin to notice questions you have been avoiding. Questions like, what kind of life am I actually building? Who am I becoming when no one is watching? What if the success I'm chasing isn't the success my heart truly wants? And as those questions become clearer, you begin to realize that many people spend decades climbing ladders only to discover they leaned the ladder against the wrong wall, which is why the courage to pause, reflect, and redirect is not weakness. It is wisdom. And wisdom has an interesting habit. It often arrives disguised as an interruption. Not every delay is a setback. Not every closed door is a punishment. Not every unexpected change is working against you. Sometimes life interrupts your plans because your plans have become too small for the person you are capable of becoming. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever been forced to slow down? Perhaps you lost a job. Perhaps a relationship ended. Perhaps a business failed. Perhaps you watched something you spent years building suddenly disappear. In those moments, your first instinct is to ask, why is this happening to me? But there is another question that can completely change the direction of your life. What is this trying to teach me? Those two questions produce completely different people. The first keeps you trapped in blame. The second moves you toward growth. Let me tell you a story. There was a young stonecutter who dreamed of creating beautiful sculptures. Every day he walked past an old master whose work attracted people from every corner of the city. One afternoon, frustrated by his own slow progress, the young man finally asked, "How long did it take you to become this skilled?" The old master smiled. "You are asking the wrong question." The young man looked confused. "The right question," the master continued, "is how many times I was willing to begin again." Those words stayed with him. Because every masterpiece hidden inside a block of stone requires thousands of strikes that nobody applauds. People admire the final sculpture. Nobody celebrates the first awkward cut. Nobody photographs the mistakes. Nobody frames the broken pieces lying on the floor. Yet without those broken pieces, there would never be beauty. Your life works the same way. Every mistake you learn from removes something unnecessary. Every disappointment chips away at pride. Every challenge reveals strengths that comfort could never expose. Here's what most people don't understand. Failure is not always a sign that you are moving in the wrong direction. Sometimes failure is proof that you are finally attempting something meaningful. Children fall before they walk. Musicians play wrong notes before beautiful melodies. Writers fill wastebaskets before publishing books. Builders redraw plans before constructing remarkable buildings. Growth has always looked messy from the inside. Only after success arrives do people rewrite the story and make it sound simple. But while you are living it, it rarely feels simple. It feels uncertain. It feels uncomfortable. It feels lonely, which is why focusing on yourself requires courage. Not loud courage. Create courage. The courage to keep showing up without applause. The courage to improve without announcing it. The courage to stay faithful to a vision that only you can see. Think about the sunrise. It never asks permission to appear. It never competes with yesterday's sunset. It simply arrives at the appointed time. There is wisdom in that nature never compares. The moon does not envy the stars. The ocean does not compete with the mountains. Every part of creation fulfills its assignment. Human beings often become exhausted because they keep trying to fulfill someone else's assignment. You cannot live peacefully while constantly measuring your life against people whose journey was never meant to be yours. Comparison is one of the fastest ways to lose gratitude. And gratitude is one of the fastest ways to regain perspective. I learned something from an elderly gardener who spent nearly every afternoon caring for a public park. Children played nearby. People walked through without even noticing him. He wasn't famous. He wasn't wealthy. Yet there was an unmistakable peace about him. I asked him, "Why do you spend so much time caring for flowers that strangers may never appreciate?" He smiled as he watered a small plant. "I don't grow flowers because everyone notices. I grow flowers because growth is what healthy things do." That answer has never left me. Healthy minds grow. Healthy relationships grow. Healthy habits grow. Healthy character grows. Growth is not an event. It is evidence that life is flowing through you. When you stop growing, you slowly begin shrinking long before anyone notices. Growth demands curiosity. Curiosity asks better questions. Instead of asking, "Why am I behind?" ask, "What skill can I improve today?" Instead of asking, "Why is their life easier?" ask, "What responsibility have I been avoiding?" Instead of asking, "When will I become successful?" ask, "Who am I becoming while I wait?" Those questions shift your focus from outcomes to development, and development always produces better outcomes over time. Let me tell you something. The world often celebrates talent. Life quietly rewards consistency. Talent may open a door. Consistency builds a house. Talent may earn applause. Consistency earns trust. Talent may impress people once. Consistency changes generations. Never underestimate the quiet power of ordinary days lived with extraordinary intention. There was once a clockmaker whose watches were known throughout the country. Someone asked him what made his work so precise. He didn't mention expensive tools. He didn't mention natural ability. Instead, he said, "I respect tiny mistakes because tiny mistakes eventually become large problems." Think about that. One missed workout is not the issue. One dishonest conversation is not the issue. 1 hour wasted is not the issue. The danger comes when tiny choices quietly become permanent patterns. Parts become habits. Habits become identity. Identity shapes destiny. That is why focusing on yourself means paying attention to small things before they become big things. A crack in a foundation looks harmless until years later. An unchecked attitude seems insignificant until it damages relationships. A neglected dream appears unimportant until one day regret asks why you abandoned it. Small decisions whisper, large consequences shout. Here's what most people don't understand. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is protection. A budget protects your future. Exercise protects your health. Honesty protects your reputation. Patience protects your relationships. Learning protects your opportunities. Boundaries protect your peace. People often see discipline as something restrictive, but every meaningful freedom is built upon disciplined choices. A musician is free because of disciplined practice. A pilot flies confidently because of disciplined training. A surgeon operates steadily because of disciplined preparation. Freedom is rarely the absence of discipline. It is often the reward for it. Imagine building a bridge across a deep canyon. Every bolt matters. Every beam matters. No engineer says, this small piece doesn't matter. Because they understand something important. Strength is created through details. Your character is built exactly the same way. How you respond when someone interrupts you. How you speak when nobody important is listening. How you behave when no reward is waiting. Those quiet moments become the invisible architecture of your life. People often ask, how do I become more confident? Confidence is rarely found. Confidence is earned. Every promise you keep to yourself adds another brick. Every excuse you refuse removes another obstacle. Every difficult conversation you handle with maturity strengthens another pillar. Eventually, confidence is no longer something you search for. It becomes the natural result of integrity. Let me ask you something. If your future self walked into this room today, would they recognize your daily routine? Would they see someone moving toward the life they are living? Or would they gently place a hand on your shoulder and say, you are spending too much time on things that will never matter? That question deserves silence, because your schedule tells the truth long before your words do. Your calendar reveals your priorities. Your habits reveal your values. Your attention reveals your future. People say they value family, yet they never make time. People say they value health, yet they neglect their body. People say they value wisdom, yet they never study. The gap between what we say and what we repeatedly do determines the quality of our lives. Closing that gap is one of the greatest acts of self-respect. There is another lesson that changed how I view progress. Picture an archer standing before a distant target. Everyone watches the arrow. Few notice the posture, the breathing, the grip, the patience before the release. But those unseen moments determine whether the arrow reaches its destination. Success often works that way. People admire results. Wise people master preparation. Focus on preparing yourself so thoroughly that opportunities become easier to recognize when they finally appear. Because opportunities are often invisible to the unprepared mind. And sometimes the biggest opportunity in your life does not arrive wearing the label success. Sometimes it arrives disguised as responsibility, a difficult project, a struggling friendship, a chance to serve. A problem everyone else avoids. While others run away from responsibility, the person who has learned to focus on becoming better quietly steps forward because they understand that every responsibility accepted with character stretches the capacity of the person who accepts it. And that is where another remarkable truth begins to reveal itself, because the more responsibility you learn to carry with wisdom, the more you start noticing that your greatest limitations were never outside of you. They were hidden inside the stories you had been telling yourself for years. Stories that sounded so convincing that you almost accepted them as permanent truth until one ordinary morning, until one ordinary morning when you looked in the mirror and realized something that changed everything. The mirror had never been your enemy. Time had never been your enemy. Other people had never truly been your enemy. The greatest battle had always been between the life you were settling for and the life you were capable of creating. And in that quiet moment, something shifted. Not because the world suddenly became easier. Not because every problem disappeared. But because you finally understood that your greatest investment would never be in the stock market, a business, a degree, or even a career. Your greatest investment would always be in the person making every decision. Think about this for a moment. If you improve your income without improving your character, you may lose both. If you improve your reputation without improving your integrity, the truth will eventually catch up. If you improve your appearance without improving your mind, you'll always feel incomplete. But when you improve the person within, every area of life gains a stronger foundation. A stronger person builds stronger relationships. A wiser person makes better financial decisions. A healthier person brings more energy into every opportunity. A disciplined person creates options that an undisciplined person never even sees. The world changes when the individual changes. Let me tell you one final story. An elderly man was walking along a beach at sunrise. The tide had washed thousands of starfish onto the shore. As he walked, he bent down, picked one up, and gently threw it back into the ocean. A younger man watched for several minutes before finally saying, "There are thousands of them. You can't possibly save them all. What difference does it make?" The old man picked up another starfish, held it for a moment, and tossed it into the waves. Then he smiled and said, "It made a difference to that one." There is profound wisdom in that simple moment. You do not have to change the entire world in one day. You simply have to faithfully improve the small piece of the world that has been entrusted to you, your habits, your attitude, your health, your family, your work, your integrity, your words, your mind, your spirit. Those daily improvements ripple outward farther than you can imagine. A parent who becomes more patient changes a family. A teacher who keeps learning changes generations. A business owner who leads with integrity changes a workplace. A friend who chooses encouragement instead of criticism changes someone's difficult day. The impact of a focused life cannot always be measured immediately, but it is always felt over time. Remember that success is not measured only by what you accumulate. It is measured by who you become while pursuing what matters. The strongest people are not necessarily the wealthiest. They are the ones who remain kind when life becomes difficult. They remain honest when dishonesty seems easier. They remain disciplined when comfort calls their name. They remain hopeful when circumstances tempt them to surrender. That kind of strength cannot be purchased. It must be developed. Every challenge you have faced has given you an opportunity to become that person. Some of those opportunities came wrapped in disappointment. Some arrived through failure. Some through loss. Some through waiting. Yet every season carried a lesson that could either harden your heart or deepen your wisdom. And today you still have the ability to choose. You can choose to compare, or you can choose to create. You can choose distraction, or you can choose direction. You can choose excuses, or you can choose responsibility. You can choose comfort, or you can choose growth. You can choose to spend another year waiting for confidence, or you can begin building confidence by keeping one promise to yourself today. Never underestimate the power of one decision. One decision to wake up earlier, one decision to read instead of scroll, one decision to forgive instead of carrying resentment, one decision to learn a new skill, one decision to save instead of waste, one decision to speak with integrity, one decision to finish what you start. Lives rarely change because of one dramatic moment. They change because one wise decision is repeated until it becomes a way of life. Years from now, people may look at your life and call you fortunate. They may call you gifted. They may say you were in the right place at the right time. But you will know the truth. You will remember the mornings when no one was watching. You will remember the evenings when quitting seemed easier. You will remember the quiet sacrifices that nobody applauded. You will remember choosing discipline over convenience, learning over entertainment, patience over frustration, courage over fear, and purpose over distraction. Those unseen moments are where your future was truly built. So as you leave today, don't leave searching for someone else to become. Don't leave trying to imitate another person's journey. Don't leave believing that your value depends on applause, approval, or comparison. Leave with a quiet commitment to become a little wiser than yesterday, a little stronger than yesterday, a little more disciplined than yesterday, a little more grateful than yesterday, a little more intentional than yesterday, because the most extraordinary life is not created by extraordinary people. It is created by ordinary people who refuse to stop improving. Focus on your mind because it shapes your choices. Focus on your character because it shapes your legacy. Focus on your habits because they shape your future. Focus on your purpose because it gives meaning to your effort. And above all, focus on becoming the kind of person who inspires others, not through perfect words, but through a life that quietly reflects consistency, humility,